Imagine the Roman Empire, once a colossus of stone and glory, beginning to crack from within, like an ancient wall corroded by time. At the heart of this decline, the internal weakening of the empire pulsed like an open wound. Politics, which should have been the foundation of order, had turned into a battlefield of unseen struggles. Emperors rose to the throne, only to be overthrown by coups, assassinations, or betrayals, in a frenzied dance of power that left Rome without strong leaders. Between the 3rd and the 5th centuries, instability was so severe that some emperors ruled for only a few months, unable to unite a fragmented empire. Corruption ate away at the foundations like termites. Governors and senators lined their pockets with taxes meant to maintain roads, armies, and cities, while the population sank deeper into misery. Inflation soared, reducing golden coins to worthless pieces of metal. And people stood in lines for bread amid a striking inequality, where the wealthy lived in palaces while the poor barely survived in the streets. And what of the army? The iron fist of Rome. It too had weakened. To defend its borders, the empire came to rely on barbarian mercenaries, warriors from Germanic tribes who fought for gold, not loyalty. These men often held greater allegiance to their own tribes than to the Roman eagle, planting the seeds of disorder within the legions themselves. Each internal crisis widened the cracks, leaving Rome exposed to forces beyond its borders, ready to exploit these weaknesses. How could such a divided empire possibly withstand what was yet to come? Picture the Roman Empire as a fortress under siege, its walls trembling beneath the relentless impact of unceasing waves. The pressure of barbarian invasions began to intensify in the 3rd century, when Germanic tribes, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, and other peoples started knocking at the gates of Rome. These warriors, driven by hunger for fertile lands and resources, did not come merely to plunder. They came to remain. Their swords gleamed with the promise of a new homeland, and the Roman frontiers, once impenetrable, began to yield like rotting wood. The arrival of the Huns, led by the fearsome Attila, struck like thunder, shaking the world. This nomadic people, fierce and relentless, swept across the steppes like a storm, driving other tribes into the very heart of the empire. The Visigoths and the Vandals, forced from their own lands, had no choice but to invade Roman territories in search of refuge and survival. Each wave of invaders rose like a rising tide, pressing upon the Roman defenses, already weakened by internal crises. The legions, once invincible, now struggled to hold back an enemy that seemed to appear from every direction. And in the midst of this chaos, an epic clash was taking shape, one that would forever mark the history of Rome. View a battlefield shrouded in dust and cries, where the fate of an empire hangs by a thread. The Battle of Adrianople in the year 378 after Christ was an earthquake that shook the very foundations of the Roman Empire. On the plains of Thrace, the Roman army, commanded by Emperor Valens, confronted the Visigoths, a barbarian force hungry for victory. What was meant to be a demonstration of Roman power turned into a catastrophe. The Visigoths, with their swift cavalry and fierce tactics, shattered the legions, cutting down much of the eastern army. Emperor Valens himself fell, his body lost in the chaos, a grim symbol of Rome's fragility. This defeat was not merely a loss of men, but a wound carved into the soul of the empire. Adrianople revealed to the world that Rome, once thought invincible, could indeed be defeated. The Visigoths, now emboldened, realized they could not only resist, but also conquer. Territories began slipping from Roman hands, and the aura of invulnerability dissolved like smoke. The echo of this battle would resound for years, inspiring other peoples to challenge the empire and paving the way for even greater humiliations that Rome would soon endure. Rome, the eternal city, with its marble columns and ancestral glory, now trembled under the weight of humiliation. The sack of Rome in the year 410 after Christ, led by the Visigoths under Alaric, was a blow that reverberated across the world. The walls, once a symbol of strength, were breached, and the streets of the capital were filled with barbarian warriors who plundered treasures and challenged Roman invincibility. Although Rome was no longer the strategic heart of the empire, this sack struck at the pride of a people who had long believed themselves untouchable. 45 years later, in the year 455 after Christ, the Vandals, under the command of Genseric, repeated the feat with even greater audacity. For weeks, they systematically looted the city, taking gold, silver, and even sacred relics. Each desecrated temple, each toppled statue, these events not only tarnished the prestige of the empire, but also ignited a spark of boldness in the hearts of barbarian peoples who now saw Rome as a giant with feet of clay, and with the eternal city vulnerable. The stage was set for the final act of a collapsing empire. Once the queen of the world, now reduced to an echo of her former grandeur, with her legions shattered and her pride in tatters. The fall of Rome and the deposition of Romulus Augustulus in the year 476 after Christ was the final breath of the Western Roman Empire. Romulus Augustulus, a young emperor, little more than a puppet, reigned under the weight of an empty title. His fate was sealed when Odoacer, a barbarian leader of Germanic origin, marched into Italy. With a loyal army and Rome defenseless, Odoacer deposed the young emperor without shedding a drop of blood, sending him into exile with a pension, a gesture blending both pity and disdain. Odoacer did not content himself with being merely a conqueror. He proclaimed himself King of Italy, discarding the farce of a new emperor. The imperial insignia, symbols of a power now extinct, were sent to Constantinople, where the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, still endured. To the world, the year 476 after Christ marked the end of an era, when the light of Rome in the West went out, leaving the stage open for new barbarian kingdoms. Yet, while the West fell into shadows, another story, in distant lands, continued to shine, carrying the legacy of Rome in an unexpected form.